Boy, what I would do to get that hair back, huh? Well, I would like to thank everyone at the Bristol Sports Hall of Fame for this award, and I'd like to congratulate all the other inductees tonight. As a lifelong resident of Bristol, I know what an incredible and passionate sports town Bristol is, and how many great athletes it has produced over the years, many of whom are here tonight or have already been inducted in the past. I'm truly honored and humbled to know that I'm now part of that group. I'd like to start tonight by dedicating this to my father, whom some of you know passed away this past January. My father was not much of a sportsman, but he worked extremely hard to make sure that we always had the things we needed to play sports. I particularly remember when I was 11 years old and about to start the Little League All-Star Tournament with a beat-up old glove that was starting to fall apart. One day after practice, I see him walking toward the dugout with a bag in his hand, and he hands it to me and he says, "Here, I thought you would need this." I looked inside, and it was a brand new Wilson A2000, the glove I had been dreaming about for a long time but never thought we could afford. At that moment, I don't know who was more proud, me for getting the glove or my dad for giving it to me. I know he would be extremely proud right at this moment. And to my beautiful mother who's here tonight, right there, I would like to say I love you and thank you for everything that you did to make tonight possible. The thousands of trips in the car back and forth to practice, for never missing a game, and knowing that I could always count on looking up in the stands to see you sitting there in the blazing sun or the freezing cold late at night, and for always making sure I had a clean uniform, even for the next day, even after getting home late. I'd also like to thank my two sons, Dan and Matt, for taking the time from their busy schedules to travel here tonight. Now, unfortunately, my kids never had a chance to see me play, but having grown up in Bristol, we would typically run into someone I knew at the grocery store or restaurant, and they would turn to them and say, "Hey, did you guys know that your dad was one heck of a ball player?" Or, "Yeah, he was a really great hitter," and so on and so forth. They would politely acknowledge the comments, but I could really see in their eyes what they were really thinking was, "Yeah, we know Dad. Dad has already told us that 1,000 times." So it was probably about 10 years ago that I was asked to play in a Legends of Legion game. At that point, it had probably been about 15 or 20 years since I had actually been on a baseball field, so I was a little reluctant at first. But with a little prodding from my wife and kids, I agreed to play and thought maybe this was the moment that I could show them I really actually could play. During the game, I was playing second base, and Sam Horn, the ex-Red Sox player, hit a screaming shot up the middle. I guess my instincts kicked in, and I did a full airborne dive to make a backhanded grab, got to my knees, and proceeded to make a pretty solid throw to first base. In my mind, it was probably worthy of a SportsCenter top 10 play. Well, after the game, I'm feeling pretty good about myself, and I walk up to them and say, "So, what do you think of that play, guys?" Expecting to hear rave reviews. Nope. Dan looks straight at me and without hesitation says, "Dad, when I looked up and saw you laying on the ground, I thought you had tripped." Talk about humbling. So hopefully Dan and Matt tonight, in some small way, validates all those tall tales I told you through the years. And thank you to my brother Steve for always allowing little brother to play along and play baseball with you and the other big boys in the neighborhood. Never once did you say, "You can't play," even when I started getting picked before you when we were making teams. Just kidding. Seriously, thanks for those many long wiffle ball duels throwing against the cement strike zone in the backyard, and for figuring out how to throw some crazy curveballs and splitters with those whammo balls. That was a blast. Growing up, I had a passion for playing baseball from a very early age, whether it was playing Nerf ball home run derby in the front yard with Steve and cousin Brad, or waking up early every day for school so that I could walk across the street to Hubble to play wiffle ball with Gary Gibson and Jimmy Nelson, or riding my bike down the street to the Bedoin's house to play in our summer-long fastball tennis ball league, where we had teams and actually kept statistics. If there was a baseball game of any kind to be played, you can rest assured I was going to find it somehow or some way and play from sun up to sundown. Speaking of those fastball tennis ball leagues, I've been asked over the years how it was that I became such an accomplished hitter at an early age. I can still remember being around 10 or 11 years old facing Mike Bedoin, who happened to be an all-state pitcher at that time. The first month or so, I really struggled to make contact, but as the summer went on, I started to get my timing until one day I launched a deep shot over the brook for my first home run. Mike, being the extremely competitive guy that he is, wasn't going to take that from some snotty-nosed 11-year-old. So at my next at-bat, feeling all good about myself, I naively stepped into the batter's box thinking I've got them all figured out. Well, sure enough, the first pitch landed right in the small of my back, and Mike was looking at me as if to say, "Welcome to the big leagues, kid." It was a valuable lesson learned. I'd like to also say thanks to all the coaches, some of whom are here tonight, that I had throughout all the years who taught me so much about how to play the game the right way. Bristol is fortunate to have so many dedicated coaches who have a passion and a knowledge for the game that's unrivaled anywhere in Connecticut. You don't get enough credit for the things that you do to make sure we know how to play the right way, but also how to be good students and good people later in life. And thank you to my wife, Jody, who has been there every step of the way, raising the two greatest kids we could ever ask for, even when my job required me to be gone for weeks at a time, traveling around remote parts of Africa, with no way to contact me about how things were going at home. And of course, thank you for introducing me to the game of golf, where on Saturdays and Sundays, there's still no way to contact me to talk about things that are going at home. And finally, in closing, I'd like to give a shout out to friend and ex-teammate George Springer, whose son you all know just won the World Series MVP for the Houston Astros. I'm sure through all of these years, George grew tired of hearing everyone say, "Hey, didn't you play on the 1976 Forestville All-Star team with Joey Jandreau?" Well, George, I'm sure you'd be pleased to know that after having been asked, "Hey, didn't you play on the 1976 team with George Springer at least 100 times over the last month," the tide has officially turned. Congratulations and well done. Thank you so much.